Acting good evening, Leonardo said in his unmistakable voice. But the receptionist didn't flinch. The young man behind the desk, his name tag read Jason, slowly looked up. His eyes scanned the simple black hoodie, the unshaven face, the lack of luggage. "I'm sorry, sir," he said coldly. "Salmorum, we're fully booked tonight." "Are you sure?" Leonardo leaned in slightly. "I'm willing to pay for any available room." Jason didn't even glance at his screen. "Completely sure. Maybe you should try something more affordable." Leonardo frowned. But before he could reply, the hotel doors swung open again. A well-dressed middle-aged couple stepped inside, soaked from the rain. "We don't have a reservation, but our flight was canceled," the man said, brushing rain off his expensive suit. Jason instantly lit up with a smile. "Of course, sir." He tapped quickly on the keyboard. "We actually have a lovely suite available with a park view." Leonardo watched as the same man who just turned him away magically found a room for someone else. Everything was suddenly, painfully clear. But what they didn't know was who they had just turned away. The most incredible part is still ahead. Stay tuned to find out how it all ends. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss it. People's lives sometimes change at the most unexpected moments. It all started with rain, a cold, merciless New York downpour that washes away the glossy sheen from the streets of Manhattan, exposing their true essence. Few people know that on that evening of October 17th, something happened that forever changed not only the fate of one of the most prestigious hotels in New York, but also the lives of dozens of people associated with it. This story might never have become public knowledge if not for a series of coincidences in one unyielding will. There are people for whom rejection is the end of the road, and there are those for whom rejection becomes the beginning of something much greater. The rain lashed relentlessly against the windows of the black Mercedes S-Class, turning the lights of the New York night into blurry watercolor spots. Outside the window, Fifth Avenue stretched out, the city's artery, pulsing with life even at such a late hour. Leonardo DiCaprio sat in the back seat, absent-mindedly watching the windows of expensive stores float by. It had been a grueling day, 16 hours on the set of Scorsese's new project, and then the sudden news that his flight to Los Angeles had been canceled because of an approaching storm. "How far is it to the Golden Crown?" Leonardo asked the driver, rubbing his temples. Fatigue spread through his body like heavy lead. "5 minutes, Mr. DiCaprio," the driver replied, turning onto 78th Street. Leonardo nodded and leaned back in his seat. Usually all his trips were carefully planned in advance. Assistants booked rooms in the best hotels, agreed on confidentiality, provided perfect service. But today, everything went wrong. His personal assistant Mark was stuck in Boston due to the same bad weather, and Leonardo found himself on his own for the first time in a long time, a strange feeling of freedom and helplessness at the same time. He glanced at his reflection in the darkened car window. The stubble, the tired eyes, the plain black t-shirt under his unbuttoned leather jacket. Nothing gave away the Oscar winner and one of the most recognizable faces on the planet. Maybe that was for the best, he thought. Sometimes you just wanted to be human, not an icon. The Golden Crown suddenly appeared before them, a stately Art Deco building whose outlines were blurred by the rain. The hotel was considered one of the symbols of the Upper East Side, an oasis of exquisite luxury for the elite. Leonardo had visited it several times for charity events, but had never stayed as a guest. "Here we are, sir," said the driver, stopping under the elegant canopy of the main entrance. Leonardo paid, leaving a generous tip, and pulling up his hood, stepped out into the pouring rain. A few quick steps, and he was in the hotel lobby, where the warmth and dryness enveloped him like a silken cocoon. The lobby of the Golden Crown exuded understated luxury. Marble columns, crystal chandeliers, heavy burgundy-colored curtains. The scent of fresh lilies mingled with the faint smell of antique furniture polish. At this late hour, it was almost deserted. Only an elderly couple stood by the elevators, and a bored young man in an impeccably pressed uniform, with a name tag reading Jason, sat behind the reception desk. Leonardo headed towards the counter, shaking the raindrops off his jacket as he went. "Good evening," he said in his distinctive voice, which millions of viewers would recognize from the first sounds. "I need a room for tonight." Jason looked up from his computer, cold and appraising, seeing the thousands of faces that had passed through this lobby. His gaze slid over Leonardo's plain clothes, his tired face, his lack of luggage, and something subtly changed in his expression. "Sorry, sir," Jason said, not even bothering to check the system for available rooms. "We're fully booked for tonight." Leonardo frowned. He had been to many hotels around the world and knew perfectly well that even the most popular establishments always had a few rooms available in case of emergency. Are you sure? He leaned a little closer. I'm willing to pay for any available room. My flight was canceled, and I really need a place to stay for the night. I'm pretty sure, Jason snapped, not even glancing at the computer screen. The Golden Crown is completely full. Perhaps you should look for something more affordable. There was a distinct note of disdain in the last word, as if Jason thought the man standing before him had accidentally wandered into a place he couldn't afford. Leonardo felt a wave of indignation rise up inside him, but years of working in Hollywood had taught him to keep his emotions in check. Before he could respond, the hotel doors swung open again, and a middle-aged couple walked into the lobby, a tan man in an expensive suit and a woman with carefully coiffed blonde hair. Both were drenched in the rain, but their designer clothes and impeccable manners immediately marked them out as members of high society. "Good evening," Jason exclaimed, his face instantly transformed into a mask of cordiality. "How can I help you?" "We don't have a reservation," the man began, "but we need a room urgently. Our flight was canceled due to a storm." "Of course, sir," Jason was already tapping away at the keyboard. "Let me check. We have a beautiful suite with a view of the park. I'm sure you'll like it." Leonardo watched the scene with a chill in his stomach. It wasn't recognition. It wasn't the difference in clothing. It was something more fundamental and ugly, a bias that had permeated service culture so deeply that it was almost invisible to anyone who hadn't experienced it firsthand. "Excuse me?" Leonardo turned back to Jason once he'd finished checking in the couple. "It seems you've only just found a room for these people, even though I was told the hotel was full." Jason froze for a moment, then slowly raised his eyes. There was a flicker of something like uncertainty in them, but it was quickly replaced by cold arrogance. "There must have been a glitch in the system," he said with a fake smile. "Luckily, I was able to find one number, the last one." "An amazing coincidence," Leonardo said, feeling his voice grow quieter and deeper, a sign familiar to everyone who had worked with him on the set. It was the voice of a man who had made a decision. Jason didn't answer, pretending to be busy with paperwork. The couple who had received the number were already heading for the elevators, oblivious to the unfolding scene. Leonardo could have said many things. He could have given his name and enjoyed the shock on Jason's face. He could have demanded a manager and caused a scandal. He could have used his influence to ensure that this arrogant clerk lost his job by morning. But instead, he simply turned and headed for the exit. After all, it wasn't the first time he'd been unrecognized, and it certainly wasn't the first time he'd faced prejudice. It just usually happened on planes, in restaurants, on the street, places he sometimes went to without his usual entourage and celebrity trappings. Leonardo stepped out into the rain and took a deep breath of the damp night air. Anger pulsed in his temples, but beneath it was something else, a sharp, piercing awareness. What had happened to him today happened to thousands of people every day. People who didn't have his resources, his name, his privilege. He could walk away and forget. He could laugh about it tomorrow, telling the story to his friends. But something inside him resisted the thought. The thought of people like Jason continuing to work in the service industry, continuing to judge people by their appearance, deciding who was worthy of respect and who was not. The thought was unbearable. Leonardo took out his phone and began dialing, taking shelter from the rain under the awning of a nearby building. His fingers trembled slightly, either from the cold or from the determination that was growing stronger with each passing second. "Amanda, sorry for the late call," he said when his lawyer's sleepy voice answered on the other end of the line. "I need your help. Urgent. It concerns Zolotaya Corona." The rain was getting heavier, but Leonardo no longer noticed it. A plan was beginning to form in his mind. A daring, perhaps even reckless, but one that could change not only his own fate, but the fates of many others. That night, New York City slept to the sound of rain, unaware that the story of one of its iconic hotels was about to take an unexpected turn. And thousands of miles away, lawyers, financiers, and analysts worked to gather information that would, by dawn, form the basis of one of the most extraordinary deals in the city's history. Maggie's Cafe on the corner of 77th Street and Lexington Avenue never had any aspirations for celebrity status. It was a small, slightly shabby place with cracked tiles on the floor and faded photographs of old New York on the walls. At 2 a.m, it was usually deserted, except for the occasional cab driver stopping in for a strong cup of coffee or the night security guard from the building next door stopping in for a bite to eat. There was only one other customer that night, a soaking wet man with a tired face sitting in the far corner with a laptop and a phone. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes and gray hair, placed a third cup of coffee and a plate of blueberry pie in front of him. "On the house, dear," she said with a slight Italian accent. "You look like you need it." Leonardo looked up from his laptop screen and smiled. Sincerely, warmly, the same smile that had captured millions of hearts around the world. "Thank you," he said. "You are very kind." The waitress paused for a moment, looking at his face, then shook her head and returned behind the counter, muttering something about how the guy looked like that actor from Titanic. Leonardo returned to his laptop. A new message from Amanda Norton, his personal attorney and confidant, appeared on the screen. "We found it. Zolotaia Corona belongs to Golden Star Holdings, a private investment company. The hotel has been experiencing financial difficulties for the last 2 years. Falling profitability, staff turnover, several scandals with VIP client service. There are rumors that the owners are looking for a buyer, but they are not advertising it. We are working on contacts." Leonardo sent a quick thank you and took a sip of coffee. The cafe was warm and cozy, the opposite of the cold splendor of the Golden Crown. He wondered how many of these cafes, bars, and diners, with their worn chairs and intimate atmosphere, had disappeared, replaced by sterile chain giants. How many Maggies had lost their small businesses to the relentless march of so-called progress. His phone vibrated again, this time to ring. "Leo, it's Jeremy," his financial advisor sounded excited. "Are you sure you want to do this? The hotel business is going through tough times right now, especially the luxury segment. Plus, you already have enough diversification in your portfolio." "Jeremy," Leonardo interrupted, "this is not an investment, at least not in the way you think." There was a pause. "Is it personal?" Jeremy asked cautiously. "Let's put it this way. I have my reasons, and I won't be doing this hotel forever. As soon as I get what I want, we can resell it." Another pause. "Okay," Jeremy sighed. "I've contacted a few people. I have an estimate. It's lower than you'd expect, given the location and history of the hotel. It looks like the current owners really want to get rid of it." "Great," Leonardo felt a surge of adrenaline. "What are the next steps?" "Amanda is working on a proposal. We can make the first move by morning if you're really serious." "More than," Leonardo replied. "Keep me informed." He put the phone down on the table and leaned back in his chair. Outside, the rain was still pouring, turning the streets into mirrors reflecting the city lights. At times like these, New York seemed almost magical. Shiny, mysterious, full of possibility. Leonardo remembered his first visit to the city as a young, hopeful actor just starting out. He remembered his excitement, his naivety, his determination. He remembered the small East Village apartment he shared with 2 other aspiring actors. He remembered the nights spent preparing for auditions and the days filled with rejections. The world had changed since then. He had changed too. Fame, success, money. All of this had come to him through years of hard work. But something had remained constant. His conviction that talent and perseverance should be valued above pedigree and external gloss, that every person deserves respect and dignity. The waitress, Maggie, he now realized from the inscription on her name tag, came back to collect the empty cup. "Rough night?" she asked, looking sympathetically at his tired face. "You could say that," Leonardo smiled, "but it seems she's getting better." "That's good to hear, darling," Maggie nodded. "Your smile is so familiar. I've definitely seen it somewhere." Leonardo only smiled mysteriously in response. At such moments, he valued this ordinary human warmth more than any red carpet. The phone vibrated again. A message from Amanda. "We made direct contact with Roger Klein, the main shareholder of Golden Star Holdings. At first, he refused to discuss the sale in such a hurry, but when he heard your name, he immediately changed his tone. He wants a video conference in 20 minutes. Leonardo glanced at his watch. 3:15 in the morning. That was the price of urgency. He paid quickly, leaving a generous tip, and, thanking Maggie, headed for the exit. "Hey," Maggie called as he reached the door. "You're that guy from the movies, right? DiCaprio." Leonardo turned around and winked at her. "Just don't tell anyone. It will be our secret." Maggie laughed and saluted him with the coffee pot. "Who would believe me?" The room at the nearby boutique hotel Artemis was not particularly grand, but it was clean, cozy, and, most importantly, affordable that night. Leonardo settled himself at a small desk, opened his laptop, and launched Zoom. The room was lit only by a table lamp, creating an intimate, almost conspiratorial atmosphere. 4 windows appeared on the screen. Leonardo himself, Amanda with her perfectly styled dark hair, despite the night hour, Jeremy with tousled red curls and an elderly man with gray temples and a sharp gaze, Roger Klein, a typical representative of the old financial elite of New York. "Mr. DiCaprio," Klein began with a slight German accent, "I must admit that your request is unusual. Selling a hotel of this caliber usually requires months of negotiations." "I understand, Mr. Klein," Leonardo nodded, "but sometimes circumstances require decisive action. As far as I know, Zolotaya Corona has not been bringing in the expected profits for the last 2 years. Klein pursed his lips. We had certain difficulties. Reputational issues included, Amanda interjected softly, 3 lawsuits from VIP clients in the last year. Room occupancy rates have dropped by 23%. Staff turnover is almost 40%. We're working on it, Klein replied dryly. Or you could sell the hotel to someone who sees potential, Leonardo suggested. I know the value of a good reputation, Mr. Klein, and I know how to build one. Klein looked at the actor thoughtfully. Why exactly Golden Crown? There are plenty of hotels in New York. Leonardo was silent for a moment. Behind him, lightning lit up the night sky, and a clap of thunder seemed to underscore the significance of the moment. Let's put it this way. I have a personal interest, he finally said, and I'm willing to pay a premium to the market price for the speed of the transaction. There was a sparkle in Klein's eyes, that special gleam that comes to businessmen when they sense a good deal. How significant is the bonus? 15% over the appraised value, Jeremy interjected, assuming a preliminary agreement is signed by noon and the deal closes within 48 hours. Klein whistled. Ambitious, almost impossible from the point of view of legal formalities. That's what I have Amanda for, Leonardo smiled. She makes the impossible possible. Amanda bowed her head slightly, accepting the compliment. We have all the necessary documents ready, Mr. Klein. We can send them to you right now for review. Klein thought for a moment, then nodded decisively. Send it. I'll get my lawyers involved. If everything is really as you say, and the documents are in order, you might succeed. After the video conference ended, Leonardo leaned back in his chair and exhaled deeply. Amanda remained in the chat. Are you really willing to pay 15% extra? She asked, looking at her client carefully. That's a lot of money, Leo. It's worth it, he said, and a look came over his face that Amanda knew well. The same look he had when he had once started his environmental foundation, pouring millions of his own money into it. It's not just about the money, is it? She noted shrewdly. Leonardo nodded. Today I encountered something unpleasant. You know, I've always been privileged, even at the beginning of my career, as a young actor from the middle class. White, male, good-looking, all doors have always opened for me. But not today? Amanda asked quietly. Not today, Leonardo confirmed. And you know what's weirdest? It wasn't even about not being recognized. It was something more profound. The way this Jason looked at me and decided I wasn't worthy of being a guest at his hotel. Just because at that moment I looked tired, wet, plain. He fell silent, remembering Jason's cold gaze, his dismissive tone. I was just wondering, if this is how they treat me, how do they treat people who don't have my resources? My name? My privileges? Leonardo shook his head. This isn't just an insult, Amanda. It's a symptom of a much bigger problem. And you're going to solve this problem by buying a hotel? Amanda's voice sounded surprised but not judgmental. Not just by buying it, Leonardo replied with a slight smile. By transforming it, by turning it into a symbol of what hospitality should be. For everyone, not just the chosen few. Amanda studied his face carefully, then nodded. Okay, I'm in. It may be crazy, but, sometimes crazy is exactly what the world needs. The next few hours were a blur of calls, emails, documents, and coffee. Lots of coffee. Leonardo had pulled out all his connections and resources. His team, scattered across time zones, worked like a well-oiled machine. For many, it was an unusual assignment. A famous actor suddenly deciding to buy a hotel. But years of working with Leonardo had taught them not to ask too many questions. If he believed in something, whether it was protecting the oceans, funding climate change documentaries, or now buying a hotel, they knew there was more to it than just a whim. By 8 in the morning, the main documents were ready. By 10, Golden Star Holdings lawyers had agreed on the final details. At 11:45, Leonardo signed a preliminary agreement to purchase the Golden Crown Hotel. All this time, the rain continued, as if nature had decided to wash away the old, clearing the way for the new. Standing at the window of his temporary room at Artemis, Leonardo watched as the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, creating a ghostly haze over Manhattan. His phone rang. It was Amanda. Congratulations, she said. You're now the official owner of a disreputable hotel with impressive utility bills. Leonardo laughed. The most interesting part is just beginning. What now? Amanda asked. You need to be on set by this evening. First, I need to make one visit, Leonardo replied, and his voice took on those velvety notes that made directors jump out of their chairs. And then we'll start changing the rules of the game. He hung up and walked over to the mirror. The weariness of the night was reflected in his eyes, but there was something else behind it. Determination, anticipation, defiance. Leonardo DiCaprio, Oscar-winning actor, activist, producer, and now hotelier, carefully buttoned the fresh shirt he had just received from his penthouse. It was time for the next act of this unexpected drama, and he was sure that Jason, the arrogant clerk at the Golden Crown's front desk, would never forget the face of the man he had dared to refuse the previous night. The morning at the Golden Crown began as usual. Impeccably dressed maids glided through the corridors, straightening paintings that were already hanging straight. Administrators checked lists of arriving guests. The chef inspected fresh deliveries for the restaurant. Everything worked like clockwork. Expensive, ornate, but long in need of repair. In the lobby, Jason had just started his shift. Despite a sleepless night caused by the storm, his appearance was impeccable. Crisp shirt, perfectly knotted tie, hair styled as if not a drop of the previous day's rain had touched it. He was reviewing the morning reports when the hotel's glass doors swung open and a man in an immaculate anthracite suit walked into the lobby. Jason looked up and froze. Something about the man seemed familiar. The set of his jaw, the set of his shoulders, the way he walked. But it wasn't until the man removed his sunglasses that a chill of recognition ran down the receptionist's spine. It was the same soaking wet man he had turned down the night before. Only now he looked completely different. Confident, collected, with an aura of power surrounding him like an invisible cloak. And here was another shocking fact. It was none other than Leonardo DiCaprio, one of the most famous actors in the world, an environmental activist, an Oscar winner, a man worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Jason felt the blood drain from his face. The memories of the night before, of his dismissive tone, of the superior smirk with which he had turned away the sodding customer, all of it came crashing down on him like an avalanche. His career was over. He knew that instantly. "Good morning," Leonardo said as he approached the front desk. His voice was calm, almost friendly, but his eyes were cold. "Jason, right?" The administrator swallowed convulsively. Yes, sir. Jason Pierce. I'd like to apologize for the misunderstanding yesterday. I didn't recognize you and—" "A misunderstanding?" Leonardo interrupted, tilting his head slightly. "No, Jason. What happened yesterday was not a misunderstanding. It was a conscious choice. Your choice. Sir, I can explain." "No need," Leonardo interrupted him again. "I'm not here for explanations or apologies." He placed a leather folder on the reception desk and opened it. Inside were legal documents with many signatures and seals. "I am here to inform you, from this moment on, I am the owner of the Golden Crown." The lobby froze. The receptionists, the bellhops, the guests all turned their heads in the direction of the conversation. The shock on Jason's face was so obvious that in any other situation it might have seemed comical. "Oh, owner," he stammered. "Absolutely right," Leonardo nodded. "The papers were signed this morning, and my first decision as the new owner is to fire you, Jason." The words were soft, almost gentle, but that didn't make them any less devastating. Jason blinked, as if trying to wake up from a nightmare. But why?" was all he could squeeze out. Leonardo looked at him for a long moment. "You know why? The way you treat people who you don't think meet the standards of this hotel is unacceptable. And it's not that you turned me down yesterday, Leonardo DiCaprio. It's that you turned a man down simply because he didn't look rich or important enough in your eyes." He paused, then continued, his voice rising so that everyone in the lobby could hear. "There is no place for such an attitude in hospitality, and it will not be in my hotel. Ever." A middle-aged man in a formal suit approached the reception desk. The hotel manager, Richard Thornton. "Mr. DiCaprio," he began, smiling nervously. "I must say, this is unexpected. Perhaps we could discuss the situation in a more private setting?" "Of course, Richard," Leonardo nodded. "But first I'd like to meet the team." He turned to the assembled staff, who were watching the proceedings with expressions ranging from shock to curiosity to even poorly concealed satisfaction, especially on the part of some of Jason's colleagues. "Good morning, everyone," Leonardo began. "My name is Leonardo DiCaprio, and as of today, I am the owner of this hotel. Many of you have probably seen me in films, but I am not here today as an actor. I am here as a man who believes that true hospitality is based on respect. Respect for every guest, no matter what they look like, how much money they have, or how well known their name is." He paused, looking around at the assembled group. "Yesterday I learned from my own experience that this hotel does not treat everyone with such respect, and I decided that this needs to change. Not in a month, not in a week, but starting right now." A murmur ran through the staff. Leonardo noticed a woman in her 50s, wearing a headmaid's uniform, listening intently, holding a clipboard with lists in her hands. Her brown eyes shone with some special understanding. "We'll be making a lot of changes in the coming days and weeks," Leonardo continued. "Some of them will be in the interior and service, but the most important changes need to happen here," he pointed to his heart, "in how we treat people, how we see them, how we greet them." He lowered his hand and smiled. For the first time that morning, his smile was warm and sincere. "I know this is unexpected news for many of you. I know that change is always scary. But I also know that most of you are here because you genuinely want to make your guests stay comfortable and enjoyable. And I am here to help you with that, to make the Golden Crown not just a luxury hotel, but a symbol of true hospitality." Leonardo gestured towards Richard. "Now, I would like to discuss some details with the management. Thank you for your attention." As he headed toward the elevators, followed by a clearly nervous Richard, Jason was still standing behind the desk, pale as a sheet. Maria Gonzalez, the head maid, walked past him, the same woman Leonardo had spotted in the crowd. "It all comes back, Jason," she said quietly, not slowing her pace. "It all comes back." Richard Thornton's office on the hotel's 10th floor was done in the same age luxury style as the rest of the hotel. Dark wood, leather chairs, paintings of hunting scenes on the walls. Leonardo sat in the visitor's chair, noting that it was too deep and low, a deliberate design to make the guest feel small in front of the office's occupant. An old power trick. "Mr. DiCaprio," Richard began, pouring mineral water into 2 crystal glasses. "I must admit, your appearance was a surprise. Golden Star Holdings did not inform management of the sale plans." "It was a quick deal," Leonardo replied, accepting the glass. "Accepted after some personal experience." Richard pursed his lips. "About Jason? I sincerely apologize for his behavior. He's only been with us for 6 months and apparently hasn't fully mastered the service standards yet." "It's not about standards, Richard," Leonardo interrupted. "It's about culture. And culture always comes from the top down. If your employee feels it's acceptable to discriminate against guests based on their appearance, then that behavior has never been truly frowned upon." Richard swallowed, realizing where this conversation was heading. "Do you intend to change the management?" "I intend to change everything that does not correspond to my vision," Leonardo answered calmly. "And my vision is very simple. The Golden Crown should become a place where every guest feels valuable and welcome. Not because of the thickness of his wallet or the fame of his name, but simply because he is a person who has chosen our hotel." He paused, taking a sip of water. "I have invited hospitality consultants, inclusivity experts, and interior designers. They will arrive within the week. In the meantime, I would like to get to know the staff better. I was particularly interested in one woman, the head housekeeper, I think. Dark hair, brown eyes, a very attentive look. Maria Gonzalez," Richard nodded. "She has been working here for almost 20 years. Very responsible. Guests often leave positive reviews about her." "I'd like to speak to her," Leonardo said. "And I'd appreciate it if you could prepare a full list of the staff with brief descriptions, and also guest complaint reports for the past year." "Of course, Mr. DiCaprio," Richard looked increasingly nervous. "When would you like this information?" "Today," Leonardo answered simply. "We have a lot of work and very little time." Maria Gonzalez didn't know what to expect when she met the new owner. She had seen a lot of important people in her 20 years working at the Golden Crown, but a Hollywood star suddenly buying the hotel and firing its most arrogant manager was something completely new. She knocked on the door of the conference room where DiCaprio was waiting for her. "Come in," came a voice from inside. Maria walked in to see not the impeccably dressed businessman who had appeared in the lobby that morning, but a much more relaxed version of Leonardo, in jeans, a plain shirt, and a light stubble on his face. "Maria Gonzalez?" He smiled, rising from his desk, which was littered with papers. "Thank you for taking the time. Please sit down." "Yes, sir." Maria sat down carefully on the edge of the chair. "Just Leonardo, please." He waved his hand. "Or Leo, whatever. I'm told you've been working here for almost 20 years. 19 years and 3 months, Maria nodded. "I started out as a maid, then became a senior." "Impressive," Leonardo noted sincerely. "So you've seen the ups and downs of this place. Tell me, Maria, what's it like to work at the Golden Crown?" Maria paused, accustomed over the years to holding back her true thoughts. "This is a prestigious place, sir. We serve many important guests." Leonardo looked at her carefully. "I'm not asking for a brochure, Maria. I want to know the truth. What goes on behind those gilded doors? How do they treat the staff? The guests who don't look like millionaires?" Something in his look, in the tone of his voice, made Maria believe that he really wanted to hear the truth. "I've seen a lot of things over the years," she began quietly. I've seen good people turned away if they didn't look suitable. I've seen employees fired for the slightest mistakes, if those mistakes were noticed by important guests. I've seen young administrators like Jason learn to look right through people, as if they were invisible. She shook her head. It does him. But I also saw how some of us try to maintain our humanity, how Chef Thomas prepares special dishes for guests with allergies, even though it's not his job, how Robert, the doorman, remembers the names of all the regulars and asks about their families, how I sometimes leave little notes in the rooms wishing them a good day, even though management says it's unprofessional. Leonardo listened with genuine interest, taking notes in his notebook. What would you change, Maria, if you could? He asked when she finished. She thought for a moment. I would make this place more human, less cold. Right now it's like a museum. Beautiful, but you can't touch anything. I would make it so that guests feel at home, not like they're at an exhibition. And the staff, what can be done for the employees? Respect, Maria answered without thinking. Just treating people with respect, regardless of their position. And also, the opportunity to grow. I was a maid for 20 years because no one saw anything more in me. Leonardo looked at her carefully. Do you see something more in yourself, Maria? The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her this question. Not the managers who had succeeded one another over the years. Not her colleagues, not even her own family. I think so, she finally answered. I know this hotel better than anyone. I know what works and what doesn't. I know how to make guests happy. Then how about becoming deputy manager? Leonardo suggested as simply as if he were talking about a cup of coffee. Maria froze, sure that she had misheard. Sorry? Assistant manager, Leonardo repeated. I need someone who knows the hotel from the inside, understands the staff's problems, and genuinely wants to improve the guest experience. Based on our conversation, you're the perfect fit. But I don't have a hotel management background, Maria muttered, still shaken. I've never held a management position. Education can be acquired, Leonardo shrugged. Experience comes with practice. But passion, dedication, and understanding are things that cannot be taught. And you already have them. He closed the notebook. Think about this offer, Maria. It still stands. In the meantime, I would like you to show me the hotel. The real hotel, not the one the guests see. Show me the kitchen, the laundry, the warehouses. Show me where the staff rests. I want to see everything. Maria nodded slowly, still not quite believing what was happening. Okay, Leonardo, I'll show you the real Golden Crown. In the following weeks, the hotel resembled an anthill into which someone had stuck a stick. Teams of builders, designers, consultants scurried along the corridors, measuring, planning, changing. Leonardo, despite being busy filming his new movie, found time to regularly visit the hotel and personally supervise the progress of the work. The changes were noticeable everywhere. The dark, heavy curtains had been replaced with light ones that let in the sunlight. Instead of the prim hunting scenes on the walls, the works of local artists now hung there, bright, cheerful, reflecting the diversity of New York. The lobby had been transformed, comfortable sofas and armchairs, bookshelves with literature in different languages, even a small children's corner. But the most important changes concerned the staff. Leonardo brought in the best hospitality experts to conduct training. Weekly inclusivity seminars became mandatory for all employees. A new performance evaluation system was introduced, based not on the number of guests served, but on the quality of that service. Maria, hesitant at first, eventually accepted the offer to become assistant manager. She learned as she went along, quickly, greedily, with the enthusiasm of someone who finally had a chance to realize her potential. Richard, the previous manager, was asked to stay on, but on the condition that he embraced the hotel's new philosophy. After a few weeks of consideration, he chose to leave, declaring that he didn't see himself in this concept. The new manager was Michael Chang, a young but experienced hotel professional with a reputation as an innovator. He and Maria quickly found common ground, complementing each other. He brought fresh ideas and modern management methods. She brought deep knowledge of the hotel and an understanding of the needs of the staff. One evening, about a month into the transformation, Leonardo was holding an impromptu meeting with key staff in the hotel's newly renovated conference room. Michael was presenting the results of the initial training sessions, Maria was reporting on guest reactions to the changes, and Robert, the doorman, was sharing ideas for improving the first impression of arriving guests. I've noticed a big change in the atmosphere, said Thomas, the chef, whose enthusiasm for experimenting with the menu is now encouraged rather than curbed. People are smiling, not just the guests, but the staff. That wasn't the case before. That's what we're aiming for, Leonardo nodded. The Golden Crown shouldn't just be a place to spend the night. It should be an experience that's memorable for both guests and employees. Maria, who was looking through the reports, suddenly raised her head. There is something interesting in the numbers. Over the last 3 weeks, the number of returning guests has increased by 14%. And these are not rich businessmen or celebrities. These are ordinary people who choose us for special occasions, birthdays, anniversaries, family gatherings. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Leonardo smiled. Luxury shouldn't be an exclusive privilege. It should be available to anyone who wants to celebrate an important moment in their life. Michael cleared his throat carefully. But there are problems. Some of our traditional clients are, let's say, not thrilled with the changes. We've received several complaints about less exclusivity. Leonardo shrugged. Let them complain. If their idea of exclusivity includes snobbery and discrimination, we are not on the same page. I am sure there will be others who will appreciate our new approach. The meeting continued for another hour, discussing plans for the upcoming gala opening of the renovated hotel, a new marketing strategy, and ideas for social projects that Zolotaya Corona could support. When everyone had left, Maria lingered, gathering her papers. Leonardo approached her. How do you feel in your new role, Maria? She looked up and a smile blossomed on her face. Open, confident, not at all like the cautious smile with which she had greeted him a month ago. Honestly, I feel like I've been preparing for this my whole life. Like I've finally found my place. I thought so, Leonardo nodded. Some people are born for certain roles. They just need a little push sometimes to realize it. Thank you for this push, Maria said quietly. Not just to me, but to the entire hotel. You have no idea what this change means to all of us. Leonardo smiled, looking through the large panoramic window at the lights of evening New York. I can imagine, Maria. Believe me, I can imagine. Sunlight flooded the renovated lobby of the Zolotaya Corona, refracting through the crystal pendants of modern chandeliers and highlighting the bright details of the new interior. The name of the hotel remained the same, but the essence had changed completely. Now it was a place where luxury was combined with warmth and genuine hospitality. The New York Times published the first article about the hotel's transformation before it officially opened. Hollywood star changes the rules of hospitality, the headline read. It was followed by articles in other publications, from local blogs to Forbes. The story of how Leonardo DiCaprio, faced with discrimination, did not just complain or make a scene, but bought an entire hotel to change its culture, caused a real media explosion. Maria, have you seen what they're writing in the New York Post? Carol, one of the administrators, asked excitedly, holding out her phone. Maria, now dressed in an elegant pantsuit instead of her maid's uniform, glanced at the screen. DiCaprio makes history, from Titanic to transforming the hotel industry. She read aloud and smiled. It looks like we're becoming famous. Not us, Michael shook his head, approaching them with a clipboard in his hands. Leonardo is becoming famous in his new role. Although I admit, his vision is truly changing the industry. We've already received 16 requests for interviews this morning, and that's not counting the TV invitations. At that moment, the hotel doors opened, and a middle-aged woman with a team of cameramen and sound engineers burst into the lobby like a hurricane. Where is he? She demanded, addressing everyone and no one in particular. Where is this imposter DiCaprio? Maria instantly recognized Victoria Hammond, the host of the infamous TV show Unfiltered Truth. Victoria was famous for her ruthlessness with her interlocutors and her ability to bring to the surface the most unsightly aspects of any story. Miss Hammond, Michael said calmly, stepping forward, we weren't expecting you today. If you want to interview me, you'll need to arrange it in advance. Agree? Victoria laughed, and the sound was like the sound of broken glass. I don't agree on the truth, my dear. And the truth is that your boss is a hypocrite. Maria took a step forward, feeling a defensive indignation building inside her. Leave our hotel immediately, or I will be forced to call security. Oh, look, Victoria turned pointedly to the camera. We're being kicked out of a hotel that supposedly promotes inclusivity and hospitality. Isn't that ironic? I don't think you quite understand the concept of inclusivity, Ms. Hammond. The voice, deep and calm, belonged to Leonardo, who had entered the lobby through a side door. He was dressed casually, jeans, a white shirt, a simple jacket, but he looked impeccably confident. Here comes our Hollywood star, Victoria exclaimed, turning to face him instantly. Tell me, Mr. DiCaprio, doesn't it seem strange to you to teach others hospitality when your own ecological footprint is the size of a small country? All those private jets, yachts? Leonardo calmly withstood her gaze. I have always been open about my environmental efforts and mistakes, Miss Hammond, but that is not what today is about. This is about every person deserving of respect and dignity. You want to interview me? Fine, but let's do it in a civilized manner. Victoria froze for a moment, clearly not expecting such a turn of events. She had expected a confrontation, a scandal, but received a polite invitation to talk. Very well, she said at last, but without pre-agreed questions. I ask what I want. Agreed, Leonardo nodded. Maria, can you organize a meeting room for us? 15 minutes later, they were sitting across from each other in a spacious room overlooking Central Park. The cameras were set up, the microphones were checked, and Victoria Hammond began her assault. So, Mr. DiCaprio, let's get this straight. This whole hotel thing is just a PR stunt for your new movie, isn't it? Leonardo smiled slightly. If I wanted PR, Miss Hammond, I would have simply starred in your show without spending tens of millions of dollars to buy a hotel. Then what is it? A whim? A caprice of a rich man who got bored of acting in films? It's a reaction to injustice, Leonardo answered simply. I found myself in a situation that opened my eyes to a problem I knew existed, but had never personally encountered, and I decided to use my resources to change at least a small part of the world for the better. Victoria snorted skeptically. Very touching. But let's talk about reality. You fired employees who had worked at this hotel for years. You destroyed its reputation as an elite establishment. You turned a symbol of prestige into, what? A demonstration of your ego? Leonardo's eyes flashed with anger for a moment, but he quickly pulled himself together. I fired only those who refused to change. Only those who believed that some people were unworthy of respect because of their appearance or bank account. And you know what? There were surprisingly few of those. Most happily embraced the new philosophy. He leaned forward. As for reputation, what reputation have we destroyed, Miss Hammond? The reputation of a place where you are judged by the price of your suit? Where what you appear to be is more important than what you are? If that is prestige, I am glad we have gotten rid of it. Victoria opened her mouth to object, but Leonardo continued. You want reality? Here's reality. Over the last 8 days, our occupancy rate has increased by 28%. We've received 415 positive reviews on social media. We've created 17 new jobs. We've launched an internship program for students from low-income families. And you know what's most important. The people who work here aren't afraid to smile anymore. There was silence in the room. Victoria Hammond, known for her ability to find the weak points of her interlocutors, seemed momentarily speechless. That's impressive, she said finally. But I still don't understand why a hotel? Why not a school, a hospital, a homeless shelter? Leonardo leaned back in his chair. Because a hotel is a microcosm of society. It is a place where people from different countries, cultures, social classes meet. A place where you can show what genuine respect for human dignity should look like. And also, he allowed himself a slight smile. Because the personal is always more effective than the abstract. I could simply donate money to some charity project, but then it would be just another celebrity charity. But I wanted to create an example that can be seen, touched, experienced. Well, Victoria folded her notes. It looks like you've succeeded, but I still think there's a bit of hypocrisy in your story. Perhaps, Leonardo shrugged. I don't pretend to be perfect, Miss Hammond. I'm just trying to do what I think is right. Sometimes I'm wrong, but in this case, he smiled again. I'm deeply convinced that I did the right thing. We'll see it on air in 3 days, Victoria stood up, making it clear that the interview was over. And I don't promise that the editing will be in your favor. I don't expect that, Leonardo answered calmly, also rising. The truth doesn't need embellishment. After the film crew left the hotel, Leonardo joined Maria and Michael, who were waiting for him in the lobby. How did it go? Maria asked worriedly. Better than expected, Leonardo smiled. She tried to provoke me, but I did not give in, and perhaps even convinced her of the sincerity of our intentions. You looked very convincing, Michael noted. Even the cameraman nodded when you talked about the microcosm of society. Leonardo laughed. It's not my merit. It's just the truth. Speaking of truth, he looked at his watch. We have another important meeting today, don't we? Maria nodded. Youth internship program. First group arriving in an hour. 10 students from local colleges who will learn the hotel business through practice. Excellent, Leonardo rubbed his hands. This is much more important than any interview. This is the future. The hotel's main conference room had been converted into a classroom. Tables were arranged in a semicircle, and a large screen showed a presentation with the logo of the Golden Crown Mentoring Program. Leonardo, Maria, and Michael stood in front of 10 young people, aged between 18 and 22. Welcome to the Golden Crown, Leonardo began. I am glad to see each of you here today. This program is not charity or a PR stunt. It is an investment in the future, your future and the future of the hotel industry. He looked around at the young men, all different races, nationalities, and socioeconomic backgrounds. They had been selected not for their academic achievements, but for their motivation and potential. Over the next 3 months, you will work in all departments of the hotel, from reception to the kitchen, from housekeeping to marketing. You will learn from the best professionals in their field. And, most importantly, you will be part of an experiment in creating a new type of hospitality. One of the students, a girl with short red hair and a scattering of freckles on her face, raised her hand. Mr. DiCaprio, may I ask a question? Of course, Leonardo nodded. And please call me Leo. Leo, the girl smiled nervously. I read about what happened to you at this hotel, how you were denied a room. Did it really change your idea of hospitality? Leonardo thought for a moment. You know, I travel a lot. I've been in the best hotels in the world and in small guest houses in remote villages. And it's often in the simplest places that I've encountered the most sincere hospitality. Not because I'm famous, but simply because I'm a person who's crossed their threshold. What happened here wasn't just an unpleasant incident. It was a reminder of how easily we create barriers between people, how easily we begin to judge by appearance, by clothes, by accent. He glanced around at the young faces. Have any of you ever felt invisible? Have any of you ever experienced prejudice? This should not be the norm, especially in an industry that calls itself welcoming. There was a deep, profound silence in the room. Some of the students nodded, recognizing their own experiences in his words. But enough philosophy, Leonardo clapped his hands, bringing everyone back to reality. Maria and Michael have put together a training program for you. It will be intense, challenging in places, but I am confident that each of you will cope. Now let's begin the tour of the hotel. As the group exited the conference room, Leonardo noticed a familiar figure in the far corner of the lobby. The man stood nervously, shifting from foot to foot, apparently hesitant to approach. Go without me, Leonardo said to Maria. I need to talk to someone. He crossed the lobby, and with each step, his suspicion was confirmed. It was Jason, the same receptionist he had fired on his first day as the hotel owner. Jason, Leonardo said, stopping in front of him. What brings you here? The former administrator looked completely different. His self-confidence was gone. His perfect appearance had faded. His suit was cheaper than the previous Zolotaya Corona uniform, and his eyes showed fatigue. Mr. DiCaprio, Jason began, his voice shaking, I came to apologize. And not just for that night. For everything. For the way I was. For the way I treated people. He held out an envelope. Here is a letter. I wrote it for 3 days. I tried to find the right words. Leonardo silently took the envelope, but did not open it. What happened to you after you got fired? He asked instead. Jason smiled bitterly. After you bought the hotel and the story hit the news, no decent hotel would hire me. Too much of a risk to their reputation. I ended up working as a night manager at a motel on the outskirts of town. He shook his head. It was educational. You know, all sorts of people stop there. Truckers, migrants, families who can't afford anything better. And I saw that they were people like everyone else, with their own stories, problems, joys. Jason looked up at Leonardo. I'm not asking for my job back. I just wanted you to know you were right. What you did, it changed me. And maybe not just me. Leonardo looked at Jason carefully, trying to see if he was being sincere. Over the years of acting, he had learned to recognize falsehood, and now he did not see it. You said you weren't asking for your job back, Leonardo said slowly. What if I offered? Jason's eyes widened in surprise. You would do this? After everything I've done? Not for my previous position, Leonardo clarified, and on probation, say in the room service department, under Maria's supervision. I don't know what to say, Jason muttered, his eyes glittering suspiciously. Tell me that you've learned your lesson, Leonardo replied, and that you're ready to work on yourself further. I swear, Jason said firmly, I won't let you down. Not me. Leonardo shook his head. Don't let yourself down, and the people you'll be serving. At that moment, a group of visitors appeared in the lobby, journalists judging by the cameras and microphones. One of them, seeing Leonardo, exclaimed, Mr. DiCaprio, can I ask you a question? Leonardo sighed, then turned to Jason. Come tomorrow at 9. Talk to Maria about work. Thank you, Jason breathed. Thank you. Leonardo nodded and headed toward the journalists, already prepared for a new round of questions about his unusual business decision. That evening, Leonardo was sitting in his temporary office at the hotel, reviewing documents for an upcoming charity gala dinner. It was to be the first major event of the renewed Golden Crown, a fundraiser for a scholarship fund for young talent in the hotel business. There was a knock at the door and Maria entered. "Sorry to disturb you," she said, "but I need to discuss something with you." "Of course, Maria." Leonardo gestured for her to sit down. "What happened?" "I heard you offered Jason a job," she said bluntly. "Yes," Leonardo nodded. "Under your direction, if you don't mind." Maria pursed her lips. "I'm not sure that's a good idea. You know what he was like, how he treated not only guests but staff, especially minorities." "I understand your doubts," Leonardo replied softly. "But isn't that the essence of what we're trying to create here? A place of second chances, a place where people can change for the better. But there is a difference between giving a chance to someone who has made a mistake and to someone who has deliberately harmed others," Maria objected. Leonardo thought, tapping his pen on the table. "You know, when I was a kid, my dad told me a story. Once upon a time, there was a man who did a lot of bad things. He lied, he stole, he hurt people. One day, he did something so terrible that he should have gone to prison for many years. But the judge gave him a choice: prison or a year of work in a hospice, caring for dying people." He paused. "The man chose hospice thinking it would be easier, but it changed him. Facing death every day, human suffering, the courage of those who passed away, he became different. He saw the value of every life, every moment. After that year, he became one of the most dedicated volunteers in this hospice. He continued to work there even after his commitments ended." "It's a beautiful story," said Maria, "but Jason is not the hero of the parable." "Not yet," Leonardo agreed. "But what if we give him a chance to become one? He went through his hospice, working in a cheap motel, where he first encountered the reality he had previously ignored, and it had already changed him." He looked straight into Maria's eyes. "I understand your concerns, and if you are categorically against it, we will find another solution. But think, if even a person like Jason can change, then our experiment really works." Maria was silent for a long time, weighing his words. Finally, she sighed. "Okay, I'll give him a chance. But at the first sign of his old behavior—" "He'll be fired," Leonardo said firmly. "Without a third chance." Maria nodded, then suddenly smiled. "You know, it's funny. I used to be afraid of people like Jason. I thought they were impenetrable, incapable of change. And now I'm going to be his boss." "Life is full of irony," Leonardo smiled back, "especially when we create our own destiny." At that moment, there was another knock on the door, and Michael looked into the office. "Sorry for the intrusion, but we have a small situation in the lobby. Picketers." "Picketers?" Leonardo asked in surprise. "What picketers?" "It looks like a group of former loyal customers," Michael explained. "They're protesting against, quote, the destruction of the elite nature of the Golden Crown." Leonardo slowly rose from the table. "Well, let's talk to them. After all, inclusivity means that we should listen to all points of view, even those we disagree with." Downstairs in front of the main entrance to the hotel, a group of about 20 people had gathered with placards. "Give us back our crown. No to the democratization of luxury. Traditions are more important than political correctness," the signs read. The picketers began chanting even louder as they saw Leonardo leaving the hotel. In front of the group stood a tall, gray-haired man in an impeccable suit. Robert Wells, a Wall Street financier and longtime client of Zolotaya Corona. "Mr. DiCaprio," he exclaimed, seeing Leonardo. "Finally, you've deigned to come out to us." "Mr. Wells," Leonardo nodded calmly. "I just learned of your protest. How can I help?" "You can stop destroying what took decades to build," Wells responded indignantly. "The Golden Crown has always been a symbol of exclusivity, a place where society's elite could feel at home. And you've turned it into an ordinary hotel with pretensions to significance." Leonardo paused, then asked, "Mr. Wells, tell me, when was the last time you stayed at the renovated Golden Crown?" Wells hesitated. I haven't stayed here since you bought the hotel, and I'm not going to until you restore it to its former status. That is, you are protesting against something you have never experienced," Leonardo stated, "against changes you only know about from the media or from friends." He glanced around at the assembled group. "Ladies and gentlemen, I invite each of you to come inside, right now, see what the Golden Crown has become, and if after that you still think that we have destroyed something valuable, I will listen to you with respect." The protesters exchanged uncertain glances. They clearly hadn't expected this. They had been prepared for a confrontation, for security to push them off the premises, perhaps even for arrest for disorderly conduct, all of which would have created a huge scandal that would have been picked up by the media. Instead, the Hollywood star was inviting them to come inside and make up their own minds. This, this is a trick, Wells said indignantly, but there was no longer the same confidence in his voice. No, Mr. Wells, it is an invitation, Leonardo answered calmly, and it is sincere. You have been a regular guest at the Golden Crown for almost 30 years. Your opinion is important to us. I simply ask that it be based on experience, not prejudice. A murmur ran through the protesters. Some lowered their signs, apparently considering the proposal. If you come in, Leonardo continued, addressing everyone, you will be greeted with the same respect with which we greet any guest. No privileges, but no discrimination either. Just genuine hospitality. Isn't that the most valuable thing a hotel can offer? A young woman from the group of protesters, an elegant blonde in an expensive suit, suddenly stepped forward. I accept your offer, Mr. DiCaprio. My family has stayed at the Golden Crown for 3 generations. I want to see for myself what you've done with it. Thank you for your openness, Miss... Leonardo raised an eyebrow questioningly. Catherine Harrington, the woman answered. Miss Harrington, Leonardo nodded. Welcome to the new Golden Crown. One by one, the protesters began to lower their signs. Within minutes, almost the entire group, including a reluctant Wells, had followed Leonardo into the hotel. Only a few of the most stubborn remained on the street, but without the bulk of their protest, it looked pathetic. Inside, Leonardo didn't give a speech or make a special presentation. He simply asked Maria and Michael to give an impromptu tour, showing guests the changes and explaining the philosophy behind them. Catherine Harrington was particularly interested in the new design of the rooms, which combined classic luxury with modern, eco-friendly solutions. She stopped in front of each painting by local artists, examining them carefully. That's Juan Mendes, isn't it? She asked, pointing to a bright cityscape in one of the hallways. Do you know his work? Maria asked in surprise. I collect contemporary art. Catherine shrugged. Mendes is a rising star. I didn't expect to see his work here. Why? Leonardo asked, approaching them. Catherine turned to him. Because Zolotaya Corona has always preferred the classics. Proven names. No risks, no experiments. And you were okay with that? Catherine thought. To be honest, no, it was predictable. Safe, but not inspiring. Meanwhile, Robert Wells followed Michael, grumbling, and looked critically at every corner. There was an antique clock here, he said, pointing to the wall in the second-floor hall. 18th century French work. Did you sell it? No. Michael shook his head. They are now in our mini-museum on the 4th floor, along with other historical artifacts of the hotel. We have created a special exhibition telling the history of the Golden Crown since its foundation. Wells clearly did not expect such an answer. You saved the story? Of course, Michael answered seriously. We don't deny the past, Mr. Wells. We build on its foundation, but we build something more open, more accessible. By the end of the nearly 2-hour tour, the mood of the protesters had changed markedly. Some looked thoughtful, others downright impressed. Even Wells no longer seemed so combative. Everyone gathered in the renovated hotel restaurant, where Leonardo offered them lunch on the house. Over the meal, the conversation continued, but now in the form of a dialogue, not a confrontation. I must admit, Wells said, cutting into a perfectly cooked steak, you've maintained the quality of the cuisine. That's commendable. We've improved it, Leonardo noted. Chef Thomas finally has the opportunity to experiment, introduce new dishes, use unconventional techniques. Before he had to strictly adhere to the traditional menu. And that's good? Wells asked doubtfully. Try the sauce with your steak, Leonardo smiled. It's his new creation, a mix of French and Japanese culinary traditions. Wells tried it cautiously and couldn't help but let out a surprised exclamation. This is really excellent. New doesn't mean worse, Mr. Wells, Leonardo said softly. Sometimes it means better. After lunch, as the former protesters were preparing to leave, Catherine Harrington approached Leonardo. I'd like to apologize, Mr. DiCaprio. I came here with prejudice and a willingness to judge. Instead, I found something inspiring. No need for apologies, Miss Harrington, Leonardo smiled. Your openness to new experiences speaks volumes. I'd like to make a reservation for next weekend, she said suddenly. My father's coming to town, and I want to show him the new Zolotaya Corona. He'll be grumpy at first. He always is when things change. But I'm sure he'll like it in the end. Leonardo beamed. We will be glad to see you both, and I will personally make sure that your father receives the warmest welcome. When the guests finally left, most without the posters they had left at the entrance, Michael approached Leonardo. That was unexpected. You turned a potential PR crisis into a victory. I just gave them a chance to see the truth with their own eyes. Leonardo shrugged. People need that, the opportunity to form their own opinion and not take other people's judgments at face value. At that moment, an excited Carol ran up to them. Mr. DiCaprio, Ms. Hammond from Unfiltered Truth called. They're airing your interview episode tonight, not in 3 days as planned. Really? Leonardo raised an eyebrow. And in what key will this episode be? She didn't say, Carol said nervously, but the title doesn't sound very friendly. Hollywood Hypocrisy, How DiCaprio is Destroying Tradition. Well, Leonardo remained surprisingly calm. That means we have another test to face this evening. The show, Unfiltered Truth, was airing in prime time on one of the major cable channels. Leonardo, Maria, and Michael were watching it in a hotel conference room, along with several employees and students from the internship program. Victoria Hammond began the episode with her characteristic dramatic flair. Today we will tell you a story about how Hollywood tries to dictate how we live. A story about how one celebrity decided that he knows better than anyone what real hospitality is. The screen showed footage of the Golden Crown before and after the renovation, followed by an interview with Leonardo. Are you kidding? Michael exclaimed, watching Victoria edit the interview clips, taking phrases out of context and interspersing them with her own caustic comments. This is total manipulation. But it can't completely distort the essence, Maria noted. Even with such editing, your words sound sincere, Leonardo. Indeed, despite Victoria Hammond's best efforts to portray Leonardo as a hypocritical rich man playing at social justice, his calm, considered answers cut through the show's bias. A particularly powerful moment was when Victoria asked, "What about people who value exclusivity, who pay to be among their own kind?" And Leonardo responded, "Exclusivity based on who you are, not what you look like or how much money you have, is great. Hobby clubs, professional communities, creative associations. All these are forms of constructive exclusivity. But when the only criterion is the external trappings of wealth, we impoverish both ourselves and society as a whole." During the commercial break, Michael shook his head. "Shri, she is trying to destroy you, but she is failing." "That's because the truth is on our side," Leonardo replied calmly. "Even manipulation can't completely hide it." In the second part of the show, Victoria moved on to interviews with former employees of Zolotaja Corona who criticized the new order. Among them was Richard Thornton, a former manager. "Under my leadership, the Zolotaja Corona was a symbol of elegance," he said from the screen. "We maintained certain standards, a certain level. Now it's just another hotel that tries to please everyone. It's amazing how easily some people confuse elegance with snobbery," Maria commented quietly. To the surprise of the conference room audience, Jason appeared on the screen after Richard. But instead of delivering the expected criticism, he spoke in a completely different way. "I was a receptionist at the Golden Crown and was fired by Mr. DiCaprio on his first day as owner," he said, looking directly into the camera. "And I deserved it. I refused him a room when he showed up wet, without a suit or security. I thought I was defending the hotel's standards. Now I realize they weren't standards. They were prejudices." Victoria was clearly irritated by this turn of events. "You speak as if he was right to fire you." "He was absolutely right," Jason answered firmly. "I failed at my job because I forgot the first rule of hospitality. Treat every guest with respect. And you know what? When I came to him with an apology, he offered me a second chance. I start working at the Golden Crown tomorrow." The conference room erupted in applause. Even Michael, who had been skeptical about Jason's return, couldn't help but acknowledge the power of the moment. Victoria clearly hadn't expected this turn of events. Her show, intended as an exposé of Hollywood hypocrisy, was turning into a demonstration of the genuine changes Leonardo had achieved. In a desperate attempt to save the situation, Victoria addressed the viewers at the end of the episode. But let's ask ourselves, is Leonardo DiCaprio the person who should teach us hospitality? A man who flies on private jets, lives in palaces, whose fortune exceeds the GDP of some countries? Isn't it hypocritical to talk about equality and accessibility while remaining a representative of the most privileged caste of our society? When the show ended, the conference room was silent. Then one of the student interns, a young man with dreadlocks, broke the silence. "Can I ask you a question, Mr. DiCaprio?" "Of course," Leonardo nodded. "Is she right?" the student asked bluntly. "Is it hypocritical to be rich and famous and talk about equality?" Leonardo didn't answer right away. He went to the window, looking out at New York at night, a city of extremes, where luxurious penthouses neighbor poverty-stricken areas. "Do you know what real hypocrisy is?" he said finally. "It's seeing injustice and having the power to do something about it, but doing nothing. It's saying the right things, but not backing them up with action. He turned to the group. Yes, I am privileged. I am rich. I am famous. And that is why I have a great responsibility to use my resources, my voice, my influence for the changes that I believe are right. He paused. I don't pretend to be perfect. I have made and will make mistakes. But I will not be afraid to act for fear of being called a hypocrite, because the only real hypocrisy is inaction when you can change something. The student nodded slowly, clearly impressed by the answer. The others in the room also looked thoughtful. Now, Leonardo clapped his hands, bringing everyone back to reality. We have more important things to do than discuss a TV show. There's a charity event tomorrow, and we need to make sure it goes perfectly. The following day, contrary to Michael's fears, Victoria Hammond's show did not damage the Golden Crown's reputation. On the contrary, it sparked a wave of discussion on social media, much of it in support of Leonardo and his vision of hospitality. Real Gold Crown became a trend on Twitter, with people sharing their stories of service snobbery and how they value being treated with respect regardless of their status. The charity evening in support of the Scholarship Fund for Young Talents gathered a full house. Among the guests were not only celebrities and businessmen, but also representatives of the local community, teachers, activists, cultural figures. It was this diversity that made the evening special. Leonardo walked around the guests talking to each one, listening attentively to their stories and ideas. At one point, an elegant elderly woman with a cane approached him. Mr. DiCaprio, she said with a slight Italian accent, you don't remember me, but I remember you very well. Leonardo looked at her carefully. Maggie? From the cafe on the corner? The woman beamed. You remembered? Yes, it's me. Maggie Rosselli. I received an invitation to this evening, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I'm glad you came, Leonardo said sincerely. Your cafe was an oasis of warmth for me that night, and you know, it was there that I decided to buy this hotel. So I have a little to do with this story? Maggie's eyes sparkled. Of course, Leonardo smiled. By the way, I'd like to introduce you to someone. Maria, he called. When Maria approached, Leonardo said, Maria, this is Maggie, the owner of Maggie's Cafe. Maggie, this is Maria Gonzalez, the assistant manager of the hotel. Maria, I think we should discuss the possibility of collaborating with Maggie's Cafe, perhaps supplying their amazing blueberry pie for our breakfast. While the two women were discussing a possible partnership with interest, Leonardo stepped away to greet the new guests. At the entrance, he noticed Jason, dressed in a hotel uniform, helping an elderly gentleman with a stroller. It's all right, Mr. Cohen, Jason said, carefully steering the stroller. I'll take you straight to your desk. By the way, your daughter is already here waiting for you. Leonardo smiled as he watched the scene. It was Jason's first day on the job, and he was already showing genuine concern for a guest who clearly needed help. The evening was in full swing when Michael called Leonardo. We have a little surprise for you, he said with a mysterious smile. If you don't mind. A surprise. Serenorno. Leonardo was surprised. What kind? You'll see. Michael led him to a small stage set up in the banquet hall. When Leonardo walked onto the stage, the audience fell silent. Michael took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are gathered here not only to raise funds for talented youth, but also to mark the beginning of a new era for the Golden Crown, an era that would never have come about without one man, Leonardo DiCaprio. The hall exploded with applause. Leonardo smiled sheepishly. But we don't want to make long speeches, Michael continued. Instead, we want to show you something. A video started playing on the big screen. It was a short film created by the hotel staff. It featured interviews with the staff, with guests, with participants in educational programs. Each told their story about how Zolotaya Corona changed their lives. Maria spoke of her rise from maid to assistant manager. Thomas, the chef, spoke of his new creative freedom. Young interns spoke of the opportunities they had been given. Former protesters, including Robert Wells, admitted to changing their minds after visiting the renovated hotel. The final shots showed the night lobby of the Golden Crown, where Leonardo DiCaprio was peacefully chatting with a homeless man who had come into the hotel to take shelter from the rain. Instead of throwing him out, Leonardo offered him a cup of hot tea and listened attentively to his story. The scene was secretly filmed by one of the maids, and it showed what Leonardo did not want to advertise: his true humanity away from the cameras and the public. When the video ended, there was a moment of silence in the room, and then loud applause. People stood up from their seats, expressing their gratitude and respect. Leonardo, clearly touched, raised his hand, calling for silence. I don't know what to say. His voice shook slightly with emotion. Except that all of this is not the merit of one person. It is the result of the work of every employee of the hotel, everyone who believed in the idea that hospitality should be sincere and universal. He glanced around the room. Mahon, When I first came to this hotel, wet from the rain and tired, I was rejected. But today I see that from that rejection, something beautiful was born. A community of people who believe that every person deserves respect and warmth, no matter what they look like or how much money they have. Leonardo raised his glass. For a new beginning, for true hospitality, for the golden crown, which is finally worthy of its name. The guests raised their glasses, and the hall was filled with the clink of crystal and shouts of approval. At that moment, a little girl, the daughter of one of the maids, came up to Leonardo on stage with a bouquet of flowers. "Thank you for giving my mother a chance," she said, holding out the bouquet. Leonardo dropped to one knee to be at the child's eye level. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for reminding us all who we're really working for." He looked up to see multiple cameras capturing the moment. Tomorrow, these photos would appear in newspapers and on social media. But that didn't matter right now. What mattered was what was happening here and now. A moment of genuine human connection that breaks down barriers and builds bridges. Leonardo knew deep down that his experiment had succeeded. The Golden Crown was more than just a hotel with a new philosophy. It was a symbol of how one person could change the world around them, if they had the courage to act, not just talk.